Today, we're taking a deep dive into a tool you probably use dozens of times a day, your dental curing light. We're going to uncover why the specific light you choose, and, just as importantly, how you use it, might just be the hidden key to the success or failure of your restorations. So let's kick things off with a number that might just surprise you. 6 years. According to a whole bunch of studies, that's the median lifespan for posterior composite restorations out there in the real world. Now, if that sounds a bit low, it's because it is. It's way lower than what we see in those perfect, controlled clinical trials.
So, what's going on here? Why the gap? Well, it's complicated for sure, but one huge factor that often gets overlooked is simply inadequate light curing. And that entire chain of events starts with the light you decide to buy in the first place.
Okay, so let's tackle the biggest myth right out of the gate. So many of us, when we're shopping for a new curing light, we get fixated on just one number, the irradiance. But focusing only on that, well, that can be a really critical mistake.
Irradiance. It's basically just how concentrated the light's power is. But here's the thing, that number, all by itself, tells you almost nothing about how well that light actually performs. Let me show you exactly what I mean. To really get this, we've got to separate two key ideas. First, you have radiant power. Think of this as the total horsepower of the light's engine. It's the raw energy it's putting out. Then you have irradiance, which is just how focused that power is, like a spotlight. They are absolutely not the same thing. And here's the trick. A manufacturer can take a light with pretty low total power, a weak engine, and just stick a really narrow tip on it. By squeezing that weak beam into a teeny tiny spot, that irradiance number on the box suddenly looks amazing, but the total amount of energy you're actually delivering is still low.
So having enough total power, that's just step one. The second piece of the puzzle, and this is just as important, is the kind of light your unit is actually producing.
See, inside your composites, you've got these little molecules called photo-initiators. The classic one, camphorquinone, or CQ, gets kicked into gear by blue light. But a lot of the newer composites out there also have other initiators, like TPO or ivosiren, and these guys need violet light to really start the curing part.
And this leads to a massive difference between lights. Look at the left here, a traditional single-peak LED. It puts out a really narrow band of blue light. It's fantastic for CQ, but it might completely whiff on those other initiators. Now look at the right. Broadband light pumps out both violet and blue light, covering all the bases and making sure you get a more complete cure, no matter what material you're using.
This brings us to our third factor. This might be the most overlooked one of all. We're talking about the beam profile.
I mean, think about it. You can have the right amount of power and the perfect color spectrum, but if that light energy isn't getting spread out evenly across the whole restoration, you are literally building a weak spot into your work from day one. A lot of lights out there, especially some of the budget models, deliver a really uneven beam. What you get are hot spots with tons of energy right next to cold spots that get almost no light at all. And guess what? Those undercured cold spots, that's exactly where failures begin.
Okay, so we've armed you with all this science. What does it mean in the real world? What should you actually be looking for and, more importantly, asking about when you're ready to buy your next curing light?
All right, here's your checklist. This is your cheat sheet. Instead of just asking for the irradiance, you need to ask for the total radiant power and the tip diameter. Ask them to show you the emission spectrum so you can match it to your materials. Ask for a beam profile image. Any reputable company will have this data. These are the questions that cut right through the marketing hype and get to what really matters. Finally, let's wrap up with two absolutely critical factors. These don't just affect the quality of your cure, but they also affect the safety of you, your team, and of course, your patients. The blue light hazard is not a myth, it's very real. The wavelength that's most likely to cause potential retinal damage is close to the light coming out of these devices. That means that over time, chronic exposure can actually accelerate retinal aging. This means proper orange, blue-blocking glasses is an absolute non-negotiable for you and everyone on your team. And this last one sounds super simple, but it is so vital. The energy hitting your restoration drops off a lot as you move the tip away, and this drop-off isn't the same for every light. Some have a much more focused beam than others. The big takeaway here is simple. Always keep the tip as close and as perpendicular to the composite as you possibly can. Don't just take my word for it.
This quote from a published research review really says it all. So many lights out there and clinics are either underperforming or just not being taken care of. And that has a direct impact on the quality of our work and the longevity of the restorations our patients are counting on.
So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Is it possible that this essential device has become the weakest link in your procedure? It's really time we started treating it like the precision instrument it truly is. Your clinical success really does depend on it.
Thank you for watching. If you want to dive deeper into the research for yourself and learn more, just go ahead and scan the QR codes on your screen